Welcome to the stone cottage. Spring is starting to really happen around here. The leaves are not out on the tree, so we can actually see the house, but there's loads blooming in the garden. So I thought I'd take you around and show you what's happening. Obviously, lots of daffodils blooming around here. And this little blue flower is a blue squill, a little bulb. It comes in white and blue. And Mr. B likes that. There's a little bee going in there. And right behind that, a little above it, is the flowering quince with its beautiful pink flowers. Now to the other side of the walkway, we are just barely beginning to pop out with the flowering almond bush. And you can see the individual little flowers here just barely beginning. A pale pink color that kind of lightens to white as it gets older. And the branches are just covered with buds. So every day, a few more of those. And through the fence, you can see the daffodils blooming on this side, a couple of different varieties. This is an assorted variety. Great big yellow ones and ones with orange cups and little doubles in the paler yellow. And this thing coming up, that is a hydrangea that's starting to leaf out. And these are going to be our allium. First time I've planted those this year. I planted those last fall. They came from Color Blends. I think it's a purple allium. Just some leftover chrysanthemums that survived the winter. And that big cluster of leaves back there, the strap-like leaves, that is our hurricane lily that will die back without doing a thing until early August, and it will send out its flowers then. And you can see here more of the lilac. Oh, you can actually see it. Those are the buds. One of these is purple and one of these is white, as I recall. And you can see those on there. And around the front, it's one of my favorite plants. It'll be blooming in May. That's the lupin. And this is doing quite nicely. Those half a dozen plants, 6 or 8 plants, those are foxglove. So that'll be foxglove back in there. And there's a tulip, random tulip, I guess. And there's a bush back there, kind of small. That's a mountain laurel that got cut down when we put the stone on, like 8 years ago. So it's been quite some time, maybe 7 years ago. And it finally is starting to put out a few floral buds. So maybe it will bloom this year. And that one actually happens to be a white. Little crocus. I think this is more allium. I didn't write that down. I should have. And here blooming is our Pyrrhus. It's a pretty kind of droopy sort of a flower. It's really pretty. I don't know if that's focusing real well. Yeah. And this one is a short one. It doesn't grow very tall. And back there on the ground, that little bush right there, that is a scarlet honeysuckle that is new this year. It's supposed to be a fast-growing one. I doubt we'll get any flowers off of it, but any growth at all is appreciated. This is where the climbing roses had to come out last year because they were diseased. And we have also planted a couple of first-year clematis, which we're not expecting to do much. If they just put in some roots, we'll be real happy, but we're not expecting much growth at all from them. Now to the other side of the front door, beginning to see a daffodil getting ready, and there's some crocuses, but this bed is full of tulips. So this will be a pretty spectacular show of a combination, one of the color blend combinations. I'll have to look and see what that was. But these should be some different shades of pink. There also is a little foxglove in here, and there are some irises. We'll see how each of those things do. Now, I also have an azalea. Now, this is not one of my early blooming ones. I'll show one in the back that actually is blooming, but this one is an azalea. And back close to the house is the mountain laurel that blooms pink. And over here, this looks a little messy, but that's kind of the way daffodils are. This is full of daffodils, a variety of different daffodils that have been blooming for quite some time and will continue to bloom for several more weeks. And then the tulips are coming up, and right here, some hyacinth. So there are two hyacinths right there. Those were left over from the previous gardener. This was Carl's garden, and as I redid this bed, I preserved these. I knew these were here, and I preserved those. And the things that I planted, I can see some yarrow kind of in front of that little round stepping stone. There is yarrow, and then there are 3 of them around there. And I've seen all of 3 of them come back, so those are pretty sturdy. The other new thing that I planted was hydrangea. It's a new hydrangea that grows on new wood, not just old wood. And it's coming back, doing well. I'm supposed to have a couple of other different plants that I'm not seeing just yet. But we'll keep you posted for what's around. Now, this is a white squill here. And I'm not sure what this is, but this is the one that the bunnies gave it a haircut. I do think I have a mating pair of bunnies in the yard. They've been very brave, and so they may come out and join us, who knows. But I also have a couple of foxglove in there. They're a little bit lower. The ones here are not coming out quite as much as the others, but quite a few tulips in this bed also. So this one's starting off with the daffodils, and then it will move on to the tulips. And on either side of this gate, more daffodils. So this is definitely daffodil season. And here's some little white daffodils, and there is another hyacinth, and this one's a little further along, little pink hyacinth, and back behind it, some crocus. So we're having a lot of interesting flowers growing here. All of these look to be crocus, but not all of them are flowering. here a bunch of irises, rose bush, and over here, this is actually an azalea too. A very red leaf on this guy, and he flowers quite nicely, but not seeing a lot of action happening here, but he will bloom later on too. And this tree is a favorite tree of mine. This is a horse chestnut tree, and these are the buds. It has beautiful flowers on it. And after it blooms, we're probably going to remove some of the branches, limb it up a little bit, so we get a little more sunshine in this part of the yard. Now let's move along to the side yard. Okay, the side yard is always a really spectacular show. Immediately to the left here, that gnarly looking thing is the oak leaf hydrangea, just starting to put on his leaves. Butterfly bush right in front of us. But the white is a spirea. The deep yellow is forsythia. And we have daffodils and some periwinkles blooming here, a little purple squill, and these are the Edgeworthia. And the pink on the other side of the fence there is more flowering quince. And you can begin to see the fountain. We're convinced we're not going to have any more hard freezes, so we've got that out for our birdies. As we walk down the path here, seeing birdies, be a little close up, flowering quince. And the vinca, also known as periwinkle. Now here I have something coming in the future that is a little wild tulip that I can see the leaves coming up, but he's not blooming just yet. We still have some berries on the nandina. And the fountain. These are snowflakes. Kind of look like the snowdrops, but you can see the first one beginning, a little white bud there happening. So that should come out in the next few days. Over here, looking from this direction, you can see the forsythia. And down on the ground, you can see some daffodils a little further in the distance. And we have added some hellebores, also known as Lenten rose. Now this was quite the find. One of my viewers told me that at her Trader Joe's, they had hellebores for $11.99. And I was out of town, and then seriously, the day after I got back in town, I went that first morning to Trader Joe's, and they had two hellebores, these two dark hellebores that I bought. And when I bought them, the cashier said, "Oh, these are really small." And I'm like, that's all they had. They were the two very last. And she said, "Oh, the other ones were bigger." This is what she was talking about. And I said, "Well, when are these coming?" And she said, "Oh, where they do deliveries on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays." So I went back on Thursday. That was Wednesday when I bought my last two. And I went on Thursday, nothing. I was very disappointed. I got, well, I guess they're finished for the season. And I didn't go back on Saturday. And then the story is, on Monday, I had to be someplace, and the way to come home Monday morning was right by Trader Joe's. So about 8:30, I drove by Trader Joe's, and they're by the front door, and I thought, I'm going to drive by, and I'm not even going to go in if they don't have hellebores. And lo and behold, they had delivered the hellebores. So I bought 6 more hellebores, and I'm thinking they will survive my winters and give me some good color. I chose this location because I can see this area from the windows in my house. Now, we have a hole dug for one more, but I am most excited for my hellebores. Really pretty addition there. Now, coming up here is my peonies. Now, if you're a serious gardener, you're like, hellebores like shade, peonies like sun. Why would the two of them be exactly in the same location? Somebody's not going to be happy. Well, I'll tell you who's not happy. That's the peony. These peonies come back every year, but they hardly make a bloom at all because there's not enough sunshine. That's why the logical thing to put here was something that loved shade. So this is a nice bright shade, so I think these will do well. They won't burn. Another thing that's back here is a lot of daylilies. Again, daylilies like sun. So even though I've got these daylilies left from the previous owner, they have never performed, and I have just kind of been digging them out gradually as I get to them, but we're going to replace that with other things. Now here are, I bought 3 coral bells, from Jackson Perkins last fall when they did their clearance. I think this one might be caramel or something, but I wanted the light color in here. They will flower, not in the spring, but in the summertime they will flower. 2 of them are looking very good. The third one is definitely alive. I don't know if somebody stepped on it, but he's small. He's just a little fella. Probably a little critter came along and nibbled on it or something. We really do have the bunny rabbits around here. So you also see some other things coming up, and that's going to be our Maguey de Bois. What's the English name for that? I can't remember. I'll put it on the screen. But those will come up a little bit later on. I see a tulip coming up there. I don't recall ever seeing a tulip survive there, but whatever. He's being brave and putting out a few leaves. I also have a few, this is not real exciting to look at, but it is for me. So I have 3 foxglove, but here's what's really interesting. That's my hydrangea. Last year, my hydrangea, maybe it was 2 years ago, the hydrangea got, I thought it was a dead branch, and so I went to cut it off, and lo and behold, it still had a little life, so I rooted it, kept it alive all last summer, and I put it in the ground, and lo and behold, it's coming back to life. Yay, hydrangea. There is a foxglove that's looking a great deal more enthusiastic than these over here, these other 3. Now, as I recall, I'd kind of gotten to the end, and this was kind of an afterthought. I still had some bedding plants, and that's why these are not the most exciting bedding plants. And I do have a blank spot in here from having removed all of the ivy. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put in here. I may, this is such a shady spot, I may put in some my old standbys with the hostas and ferns and that sort of thing, just to give it a little interest instead of just bare dirt. This is one of those lilacs that blooms twice, once in the spring and once in the fall. So we'll get that, and here is an azalea. So in a few weeks I'll show you some azaleas. And here is a hydrangea. Still has a few of his blossoms on him. And all of those leaves back there, the thick ones are the hurricane lilies, and the thinner ones are daffodils. These are daffodils that have never bloomed, and this whole place used to be covered with them. So those are the ones that didn't get dug up. So we'll work on digging some more of those out just to clear up that space. Now, next to the house, I've got a couple of azalea bushes and Virginia sweet spire and some forgotten the name of another plant, but all of those things will bloom later. This particular azalea right here, this is my last bloomer. He won't bloom until late April, maybe not even May. He is very, very late, which is kind of interesting because my azaleas are beginning to bloom. Now, I have been working on the ivy, but you can see I still got ivy embedded down in here. It's very, very aggressive, hard to clean it all out, but I've been working on that. Here's a lot of the little vinca coming up. And I've forgotten what this is. This will bloom. It will do something. I just can't remember what it was. Should have written that down. And here is the hydrangea putting on its new growth. And the autumn joy sedum that's coming up. And over here, the daffodils. And these are some of my earliest blooming daffodils. These little multi-stemmed daffodils, these little clusters of daffodils, and you can see some white ones coming up. So the earliest ones are always these yellow ones, little yellow ones with the dark cup, and then the second ones to come up are always the white ones, and then there will be some larger ones that, you know, standard single daffodil on a stem. Those in the background over there were already here. I did not plant those. Another azalea bush. But again, this is where I have my foxglove. This is my favorite place to do foxglove because you can sit here in this little conversation area and enjoy the foxglove. And these are really going to town. Looks like some daffodils are kind of interrupting them, but these are looking really good and putting on lots of new growth. So in May, we'll have some foxglove out here. And with a garden like this, very important to plant things that will bloom in a series, not all at once. It's a pretty little view right here, the vinca in bloom along the path. And this is another flowering quince, a little different color, white with a little bit of a pink touch on it. And here are little double daffodils. And what's here is going to be irises that will bloom early May or late April, usually May, I think. And a few tulips. And here's our hydrangea. This is the hydrangea that was threatened, and I'll threaten you again. I have a witness now. If you don't give me at least one bloom, you are coming out. Last year, it had never bloomed. It's been here for a number of years, and it never bloomed. Last year, it gave me its very first bloom. So you need to perform, dude, or you're coming out. So there we go. And here's another forsythia behind the swing here. And that little bush there is another azalea. And I have trimmed back my epimedium. I don't see any new growth there. We'll hope that I didn't kill it. Here is another hellebore back here. This is the one that we thought was not going to make it, but he perked right up and it's looking very nice. And this is no man's land here. We do have some vinca, we do have some daffodils, some tulips are actually going to, ooh, I think I see my first tulip back there. This eventually is going to be a water fountain, a little pondless waterfall. Ooh, I'm seeing all kinds of interesting things here. So that's a squill, that's a vinca. I'm not sure what that little guy right there is, but as I tiptoe along, it's the first one I've seen. The Virginia bluebells that start off kind of blue and become pink. That's the first I've seen this year. And that little pale yellow, that's actually a tulip. I don't recall seeing those tulips before, but you just never know. And there's the daffodil there. Ah. And this area right here, we're building up dirt and collecting rocks, and hopefully it'll be in this lifetime that my husband will put the pond in. We'll have to see. A number of tulips coming up here. And this blank spot, it looks pretty bare right now, but underneath it there's a great big hosta that comes back. Now these little yellow flowers are a wildflower, but some people say they're invasive, but I'm sorry, if you're a native plant, you cannot by definition be invasive. What invasives do is they choke out the native plants, and so if you're a native plant, you cannot be invasive. And this is a rhododendron, which will bloom later, in May probably. Now, here it is. This back here is always my first azalea, tucked back in here. Now, it's next to the house. Maybe that keeps it warmer. It certainly does not get too terribly much sun. But maybe it's the house that causes, maybe it's just the variety, or maybe it's a combination of both. But that's always my first azalea to bloom. You can see this is an azalea. He's not even thinking about blooming. Completely different variety. And then right here above me, my camellia. So this is kind of fun because the door to my bedroom is right here, and so I can walk past the door and hold my head just right. I can see the azaleas and the camellias. They always bloom at the top first, so they're my tops blooming. And when I look over, I can see the forsythia blooming. And as I look around, I can see the daffodils and the vinca. Now, here are I think this is 3 different azaleas in different colors that bloom in different times, all here together. And right down here, this is that snowflake. I think the snowdrop comes earlier, the snowflake comes later. That's what I recall. And these are so sweet with these little bells that nod and little green markings on the tips. It's so sweet. That's just come out in the last couple of days. Azalea, epimedium. This one I did not cut back. Well, a little bit of an experiment to see who does the best. And on the far side of the house, because this shade tends to be pretty, this is a very shady area, so I have a lot of ferns. They like all that messy leaf litter, but it doesn't look quite so neat. But these are really coming out nicely. And I've got them on either side of this little well for access to under the house. And here there are some more hellebores. Now, my problem with these hellebores is I have to actually make a trip over here to see them. You have to come over for a walk because I can't see them from inside the house, and this is not a path that we go down normally, so I really have to make an effort to come over here. But here we have some little snowflakes and more hellebores. Now, when we remodeled the house, all these cinder blocks right here, they're piled up for a project that my husband has to do, a retaining wall here. But this window that looks into our kitchen used to be a sliding glass door. So what was planted out here, which we added to, there were some hellebores out here, but we definitely added all of these larger ones. But it would have been visible from inside the house. But not anymore. I have to kind of stand on my tiptoes and look out over the sink to see these, but they really are pretty. And my kind neighbor planted some daffodils. This is a place where they don't walk that often, so it was very kind of him to plant some daffodils for me, and he even planted a rose bush. Hopefully his rose bush will not get sick. These are so pretty. I'm going to cut a few of these and put them inside because they last incredibly well. They kind of dry up and just to bring a fun little pop of color. Unlike a daffodil, which looks really fun, but only lasts like 4 or 5 days at most when you pick the daffodils. But these hellebores will last for several weeks. And here's our Nandina. This is my Nandina that really likes to put on a berry show. Now, this is kind of interesting. This is the hellebore that was the last to bloom. And I've shown him before, and he was like next to nothing. And he's gotten quite tall. Really pretty, deep color. But he's quite spectacular. This again has been heavily composted, and we pulled out a lot of ivy, so this spot is bare, and we'll be doing some other things. This is going to be the blooms on this mountain laurel. And we are back where we started. Ooh, except this azalea actually has some buds on him that are quite far along. I think he's going to give us some flowers pretty soon. Well, thanks so much for joining us in the yard and enjoying a little touch of spring here at the Stone Cottage. See you next time. Bye.